All right, good morning, everybody. And I'm going to share my screen with you. I have a few slides. I know people might be a little sick of seeing slides, but I don't seem to be able to do anything without some prompting. So I'll just blow this up a little bit. So what I was asked to do today by the dean, by Loyalist College, and I want to thank the dean, Kathleen, and I also want to thank Kim and Brad and Jeremy Lauren for suggesting it. He's a senior vice president, I think, at Loyalist. I want to thank the president, Anne-Marie Vaughn. I'm very fond of Loyalist College, and I've actually coached some of your students and some of your startups that have come out of Loyalist, including FanSaves and a few others. So I'm familiar with Loyalist College, and I'll speak a little bit more about it later. But what I was asked to speak about today was don't back down, the true tale of the founding of the NHL's Ottawa Senators. I'm the founder of the Ottawa Senators, but also why sports and entertainment matters. You know, 2 generations ago, it was, often the church that brought communities together. People worshiped together, and they would have tea together afterwards. They'd have a little sandwich together. They'd share their stories together. But that probably is not as important a factor as it once was. So what can bring a community together? And I can tell you that sports and entertainment can do that. And so there's a mission here, as well as, of course, a bottom line if you're a private organization. So I'm going to tell the tale of the founding of the NHL's Ottawa Senators, but I'm also going to go through at least 1 or 2 case studies of much smaller sports and entertainment startups, so the young people on this call won't think you have to have $500 million or a couple of $1 billion to start this kind of thing. So there you go. So my name again is Bruce Firestone. I have a PhD in urban economics from the Australian National University in Canberra. I got my Master's of Engineering Science from the University of New South Wales in Sydney. I got an undergrad degree from McGill University in Civil Engineering. And I've built about 2,000 homes, dozens of office buildings, but probably what I'm best known for is founding the Ottawa Senators and building or helping to build the Canadian Tire Centre, which is a 20,000 seat arena in Ottawa, Canada. So people often ask me, how in the world did you ever get this idea to found a National Hockey League expansion franchise in what is now my hometown, the city of Ottawa? And really what happened was I asked myself a question many years ago now, it's got to be 30 years ago. What does Toronto have that Ottawa doesn't have? So you look, in a small town like Ottawa, you look at a bigger town like Toronto, and a smaller town like Belleville, you might look at a town like Ottawa, so you look at towns that are bigger than you, but maybe not so far out of reach that you can learn from their experience. So I said, what does Toronto have that Ottawa doesn't? Well, they have a zoo. I'm not too interested in animals. So I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. They have the Princess of Wales Theatre in downtown. Probably not a lot of money at that. And then I had this idea that they had a hockey team, an NHL hockey team called the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I said, I wonder if Ottawa is big enough. This was back in 1987, so long before most of the students were born, maybe all of the students were born. They had an NHL team. Could Ottawa carry one? So I had 2 key young fellows. I was young. I was probably 30 something, maybe 35. And I had 2 young fellows, really smart young men, Randy Sexton, an MBA from Clarkson in the United States, and Cyril Leeder, who was a chartered accountant, both in their 20s, late 20s, I think. And I said, we used to play pickup hockey. I said, fellows, why don't you hang back afterwards and let everybody else lead? And I said, I think the NHL is ready to expand. And they said, oh, that's interesting. I think Ottawa's large enough to host a team. Oh, well, that's kind of cool. And I said, maybe we should be the bidder. And Randy, who's he's a take charge sort of person, immediately gets up and says, yeah, let's do it. But Cyril, because he's a chartered accountant, was a little bit more cautious and said, well, wait a second, Bruce, how much is that going to cost? Here's a picture. Now, no comments about how young I look. This is me here in my 30s, please. My mother told me that hockey years are 2 for 1, so really I'm about 140 years of age. But anyway, this is me with my core team at Terrace Investments Limited. And this is Cyril Leeder, the accountant, and this is Randy Sexton, who I just talked about. And this was the core group of people who really founded the Ottawa Senators. And what it tells you is you don't really need a huge number of followers. I think Jesus had 12 disciples. Muhammad had, I think, 5 or 6 followers when he came out of the deserts of Saudi. So you don't need huge numbers of really talented people and really committed people to change the world, or at least to change your world. And this was our core team. Really a great group. So remember Cyril's question, the accountant, how much is it going to cost? I guessed 35 million US dollars. This is back in the late 80s, early 90s. And NBA franchises at that time, National Basketball Association franchises back in those days, were going for 35 million US dollars. Today, it's $2.5 billion. But the actual franchise that the NHL decided to levy was 50 million bucks. All right. And today it's 650 million. So you can see that the NBA has kind of passed the NHL in terms of franchise fees. But even back then, $50 million was still quite a bit of money. So you'll see at the top of my screen, I don't know, Kim, can you see my cursor moving okay? Yeah, you'll see at the top of this that I teach something called bootstrap capital. Now, if you're an economist, that's not the right word to use. It's called self-financing. But most people understand bootstrap capital a little bit better, you know, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. And so after I said to Cyril Leeder that it was going to cost 35 million US dollars to buy a franchise, his next question obviously is, well, how the heck are we going to pay for that? We had a very successful company, and we had about $22 million in cash or near cash in our bank account. So we weren't broke, but we didn't have 35 million US dollars, let alone the $500 million or so to build a stadium in our, you know, I checked my wallet, it wasn't there. So you do need to employ maybe some self-capitalization, self-financing bootstrap capital techniques. The bid alone cost $2.5 million. You know, I lived on an airplane for, I don't know, 2 years as I crossed the continent, meeting NHL owners, having a dinner with them, going to a hockey game with them, telling them all sorts of lies about me, what a great guy I am, and what a great city Ottawa is. That wasn't a lie. The first part might have been. And so, you know, I met with each of the owners 2 and 3 and sometimes 4 times, Canadian owners, American owners. And what people didn't really understand back there, when I say people, I mean the mainstream media, is it's just like trying to be mayor of Belleville. You have to, you know, talk to the voters. Well, in this case, there were 21 NHL clubs. This year, in 2021, there are 32, but back then there were 21. So there were only 22 voters, right? 21 NHL owners and the president of the National Hockey League, John Ziegler. So I campaigned with, my campaign focused on the voters, not on the media. And maybe if I went back in time, I would have done a better job with the media. Anyway. So how do you pay $2.5 million just to prepare a bid? Well, we sold, believe it or not, 14,000 PRNs, priority registration numbers, which would allow people to get in line to get a season ticket at 25 bucks each, all right, for a team that didn't exist. And what they got in return was they got a nice certificate saying, hey, you just spent 25 bucks. And they got a number, and they got a bumper sticker saying, bring back the Senators. So that's what they got for their 25 bucks. So they did get something for it. We signed up 500 corporate sponsors at $500 each, and 32 original corporate sponsors who pay $35,000 each. So if you add that up, it comes to about $1.7 million. That's self-capitalization, right? And what I like about this is you really don't have to pay it back. You know, if you borrow money on your credit card, you know, credit card companies and banks have a nasty habit of wanting you to repay them, right? So, you know, the good thing about sponsorship is often you don't have to repay it, or certainly not in full. All right, and then I had, in addition to, you know, self-financing, or at least partly financing the bid process, I wanted to know how I could actually pay for the franchise fee, which turned out not to be 35 million, but it turned out to be 50 million US dollars, right? So I had a plan for that as well, kind of another self-capitalization or bootstrap capital idea. We needed about 100 acres, about 40 hectares, to build the arena and a big parking lot. You know, still a lot of people come to these games, football, hockey, you name it, in their private vehicles. Obviously, many use the bus and the subway, but many don't. So we needed about 100 acres. But I said to Cyril and Randy, we're going to buy 600 acres. And the idea was very simple. We put an NHL-CALIBER arena, a new NHL team in the middle of it, of the 600 acres, drive the value up of the extra 500 acres, sell that off, take that money and give it to the NHL. Right? That was the plan. And so we bought 600 acres for an average, I think, of around 12,000 an acre. So we spent about $7.2 million on a piece of land. But when we rezoned it, the hope was that it would go up $100,000 an acre, sell off the 500 acres. If you multiply 100,000 by 50, guess what you get? You get 50 million. Sorry, 100,000 by 500, you get 50 million. Everybody clear on that? Clear as mud? So that's how you can sort of self-capitalize things, right? Here is, in fact, the land assembly that we did. If you can, again, if you can see my cursor moving around, this is where the Canadian Tire Center is. We called it the Palladium back then, but that's called Canadian Tire Center today. And you can see this is the lands, about 100 acres, that has been retained by the team, but everything else that you see here colored has been, in fact, sold off. This 100 acres was sold to a group of car dealers for a auto mall. This has been sold off for large commercial users, and this is being turned by a local development company into housing. All right, so it's kind of a mixed-use subdivision, and that was the plan. So the plan was, you know, to sell off the extra acreage, take $50 million, put it in one of these trucks, drive it down to Park Avenue in New York City, and give it to the NHL and say, give us a franchise. So that was the plan. People often ask me why I call the team the Ottawa Senators, because some people don't really like senators, you know. The Canadian Senate isn't maybe the most prestigious institution, but the Ottawa Senators actually won 9 Stanley Cups, the last in 1927. So when I hear that Maple Leaf fans are hard done by because they haven't won a Stanley Cup since 1967, I go, whoa, wait a second, fans in Ottawa, the last time we won a Stanley Cup was 1927. So in terms of branding, you guys, there was no way I was going to call it anything but the Ottawa Senators, because then we can inherit the great history of the Ottawa Senators, which were one of the founding NHL teams. I hate it when you hear on the, you know, Hockey Night in Canada, you know, the original 6, you know, they always talk about the original 6 franchises. Well, that's so much hokum. That's not correct. The original NHL, formed just over 100 years ago, included the Ottawa Senators, and there were 10 clubs, not 6. People have forgotten that, so it drives me wild. So now you know. Just a little personal story. This is my wife, Dawn, and my youngest daughter. I have 5 kids. This is my youngest daughter, Jessica. And I got 3 daughters and 2 sons. I got a blonde, a brunette, and a redhead. So I put the order in with the big guy upstairs. I got 1 of each. And then I've got 2 sons. So the night before I had to leave Ottawa to go to Palm Beach, Dawn was pregnant with our 5th and last child. And I come home and I say, I've been present for all the births of my children. And I said to my wife, honey, you got to have the baby tonight, because I got to go to Palm Beach to the NHL winter meetings tomorrow and present the case for Ottawa. And she says, yeah, right, sure. But, you know, the power of suggestion is fantastic. So around 3 o'clock in the morning, she wakes me up and says, I'm having the baby. I said, oh, yeah, sure. Wake me up when it's real. 15 minutes later, we're off to the hospital where our baby is born, Jessica. So when I want to know how old the Senators are, I just say, hey, Jessica. I call her Bessie. Hey, Bessie, how old are you now? And she tells me she's 30. So that's how old the franchise is. It's our 30th year playing hockey. So Dawn has the baby just before noon. A ice storm has closed all the airports down, you know, from Ottawa all the way down the eastern seaboard. And I have to get to Palm Beach in Florida to present. So I said to one of my staff, Greg Graham, who's now president of Cardell, a large home builder in Canada, the United States. I said, Greg, get a car and a driver, we're driving. So we get a car, yeah, I gotta be there. And it turns out you can drive to Florida in 27 hours, right? So we drive, I get to the hotel, I change into change clothes, get a shower, and I'm off to present to the Board of Governors. So that's a little story that I like to tell. We had our troops were down there, in Palm Beach. The other bidders were Hamilton, Milwaukee, Portland, Houston, St. Petersburg, Tampa, Seattle. There were quite a few bidders down there, but the only group that had a huge contingent of crazy fans down there was us. We had sold those 15,000 priority registration numbers. So we said, hey, anybody want to come to Florida? And so they were down there. We had every elevator, every taxi cab, we had these "Don't Back Down" and also "Bring Back the Ottawa Senator" stickers. We put them everywhere. Probably that we should have done that, but we did. We absolutely papered the city. And on the right-hand side of my screen, you're going to see the Ottawa Fire Department marching band from the City of Ottawa Fire Department. They came too, and it was the strangest thing. It was a coincidence, entirely a coincidence, that every time one of our competitors were presenting, they were outside playing marching music very loud. But when we were presenting, they were absolutely silent. And I was asked about that by one member of the Board of Governors. And I said, look, I have nothing to do with the Ottawa Fire Department marching band, what they do. And I pointed to the mayor of Ottawa, who's right behind me, Jim Turrell. I said, it's his issue. So everybody laughed, right? But having those people down there really made a difference, right? This was a good friend to the bid. His name is Frank Finnegan. He played in 1927 on the last Stanley Cup winner of the Ottawa Centre. So he played in 1927, and he was still with us in 1990. So I said, Frank, will you come down to Palm Beach with us and campaign for a team? And there's something that, again, mainstream media don't really understand, and that is the NHL is a family. And when an old timer like Frank shows up and says to the president of the National Hockey League, Mr. Ziegler, you give those boys in Ottawa a chance, he listens. And so do the NHL Board of Governors. He was a good friend to me, and I miss him. We have retired his number, Finnegan's number 8, in the rafters of the Canadian Tire Center. The night before he actually got the franchise, the mainstream media, and you probably can tell from my discussion here, I'm not the biggest fan of some of these sports journalists and business journalists. I find they can be quite superficial. Anyway, one of the editors, I think, from a local newspaper called me and said they were going to run a headline. I said, oh, okay, what headline? That the winners are Seattle and Milwaukee. Oh, I said, I don't think you should run that headline. Why not? We have it on good authority that out of all these bidders, Ottawa, Hamilton, Milwaukee, Seattle, Portland, St. Petersburg, et cetera, that the winners are going to be Seattle and Milwaukee. I said, okay, fair enough. Who did you talk to? Well, our sources are confidential. Well, in actual fact, what they were doing is they were talking to other journalists in places like Seattle and Milwaukee. And if you're a hometown journalist in Seattle and Milwaukee, you're going to say, oh, yeah, Seattle's a lock. Milwaukee can't miss. And I said to the editor, I don't think you should run that headline. I think you're going to be embarrassed tomorrow because I think Ottawa's going to win. Well, how do you know? I said, because I don't talk to journalists. I talk to the voters. And I think out of the 21 members of the Board of Governors and the president, we're going to get almost all of those votes. Oh, well, we have it on good authority. All right, click. So there you go. This also, Mr. Wirtz was a good friend of mine. He owned the Chicago Blackhawks, and again, he's no longer with us, unfortunately. I asked him, what is the key to running an NHL franchise? And this is a valuable lesson for everybody here. And he said, he had that Chicago accent. And he said to me, Bruce, the key is to sell 15,000 season tickets a year. And if you don't, tell them to hit the phones until they do. Now, he told me this 3 stories underground where he had a bar. And this was a little tiny space, a piano bar. And he had little tiny stools. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon when Bill and I met. And this is dark and dim. And I'm looking at this little stage, which is just a 1-step riser. And I could see that Liza Minnelli and Frank Sinatra and all these incredible artists have performed in this little bar. And I go, wow, that's pretty cool. And the tables are this big. So Bill comes in, it's breakfast time for him. So he has a couple of eggs and a scotch. That's his breakfast. And I look around me and there's all these big guys and very young women in tiny skirts, I have to tell you, serving them. And I realize I'm in a den of iniquity, if you know what that means. These are, these are people with pistols and businesses that require them, without going into any more detail. So, I got to know Bill pretty well. By the way, I don't drink very much because I have a rule, don't drink and think, but I was quite happy to watch him down a few scotches. So the key to running really any sports and entertainment business is your fan base. If you have fans, you'll have sponsors. If you have fans and sponsors, you'll have big time media rights. But if you don't have fans, we saw that last year in the National Football League. We saw that, of course, in the NBA, the National Hockey League, Major League Baseball. For the players, for everyone, to play in front of no fans is really not a whole lot of inspiration, right? I'll move on. Now, the night before we actually got the team, there was this like huge dinner, like 500 or 600 people. It's called the NHL family, and all the bidders were there. St. Petersburg and Tampa, represented by Phil Esposito, me, and many others. And at one point, late into the night, one of the members of the Board of Governors comes up to me, puts his face about this far from me, and says, "Mr. Firestone." "Yes, sir. I just have one message for you." I said, "Right, what is it?" "You will never, ever, ever get an NHL franchise in Ottawa." Holy smokes, I'm thinking. I sold 15,000 season tickets, for a team that doesn't exist. Hundreds of thousands of people in my hometown, my adopted hometown, are running to their radios every hour to get an update. I said, holy smokes, if I don't bring home the bacon tomorrow, I'm gonna have to find a new hometown. And so I said to him, "Look, sir, I think you should give franchises to cities that love the game, love the NHL, will take care of the franchise, will cherish the franchise. And that would be Ottawa, and that would be me. I think you should reconsider." He says, "You heard what I had to say," and he walks away. So I have a picture of what I looked like right after that. One of the boys took this picture of me immediately after. And, I went back to my table, I sat down, and I was, really quite shocked, I have to say. And, Cyril Leeder and Randy Sexton came over to ask me what was wrong. And, for the fellows on the call, when men are under stress, sometimes their voice goes up a little bit in pitch. And I would say, "Oh, everything's good, I'm fine." And they look at me, "You sure?" "Oh, yeah." They look at me and walk away. But then Norm Green came over. He was a friend of mine as well. And he owned the Minnesota North Stars. Now they play in Dallas, the Dallas Stars. But back then they played in Minnesota. And he said, "What's the matter?" And I told him. And he said, well, I remember what he said exactly. He said, "Get that schmucky look off your face, kid, and get out there and hustle. Maybe that's one vote you won't get. Go get the rest." He basically kicked my what. And so I said, he's right. And so I went back to campaigning. And I'll follow up on the rest of that story in a minute. This was the Breakers Hotel. This is where the NHL winter meetings were back then. And to be honest with you, it looked a little bit like the Overlook Hotel, if you've ever seen the movie The Shining. That's the one where Jack Nicholson comes up, and he's a kind of a scary guy. So the next day was the day the NHL had to make a decision. And we waited all morning. It was starting to get into the afternoon, and the tension was rising. I can tell you, I'm going, oh my God, how long is this going to take? So I said to my staff, I'm going to go for a run. I like to jog. So I got into my jogging gear and ran along the beach just to get some of the nerves out. And that points out a couple of things that I would like to reemphasize. I said earlier, don't drink and think, or don't smoke weed and think. Don't combine alcohol or drugs with business decisions or personal decisions, in my opinion, but certainly not in business. And also try to get some exercise. You know, the Dalai Lama says you should get out every day, 20 minutes by yourself, and leave your phone and your music at home. Just 20 minutes in nature. If that's all you do, just take a little bit of walk. You don't have to run. You just get away and have 20 minutes to yourself. It will help you over the long haul. And I strongly recommend something I call lifetime fitness as opposed to peak fitness. You know, if you're Brad Pitt and you get 35 million US dollars to film, peak fitness is very important. But if you're like me, or most of the people I'm sure on this call, just a lifetime of activity will really help you think clearly, make better decisions, and deal with stress. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. So anyway, I go out for this jog and I come back after about 50 minutes. And I remember it was about 10 to 1. And Connie Neal, my executive assistant, is in front of the breakers, this hotel, waving me in. So I jog in now a little bit faster. She said, the NHL has made a decision. I said, okay, what decision? We don't know. We have to be in our suite by 1, and NHL security is going to come and collect us. Okay, so I go up to the suite and I change into a suit. I didn't have time for a shower, so I probably used a little extra deodorant. Anyway, so at 1 o'clock, the NHL security comes and takes us down the back stairs into the basement of the Breakers Hotel, which looks a lot in the basement like the Overlook. And you know, the pipes are dripping on us. There's the prep kitchen down there. There's garbage everywhere. Holy smokes. So I turned to Cyril Leeder and Randy Sexton, Mayor Jim Durrell, Attorney General Elliot Richardson, who was our attorney, and Gary Burns and a couple of others are my core team. And I said, wow, you know, here we are in hell. It looks like we haven't been successful. And I said, there's nothing more we could have done. You know, I'm really proud of everything we've done. So, you know, prepare yourselves. And I said, what we'll do if we're not successful is we'll thank the NHL for allowing us to be a bidder. And we're going to hold our own press conference. This is just a picture of a press conference we actually did hold. But I said, we're going to hold our own press conference. And at that press conference, we're going to say the same thing. Thank you to the NHL for allowing us to bid. But we're also going to announce that we're not taking no for an answer, that we will be back next year at the next winter meetings, and we're going to bring back the senators next year. And that's what's going to happen. So everybody said, okay. And sure enough, I go into the board. Finally, they take us up into the ground floor where this big boardroom is. And I go into the boardroom, and there's the members of the board. And there's the president. This is John Ziegler here. And this is me on his right. So on the left-hand side of your screen, that's Bruce. And there's President John Ziegler. And over on the other side of John, you can't see it, is the other winner, which is Phil Esposito and the Tampa Bay Lightning. I cut him out of the picture. So here's me. And so I go into the Board of Governors, and Marcel Lebeau, who was the owner of the Quebec Nordiques, unfortunately, they're no longer with us, the Nordiques I'm talking about. And Marcel comes up to me, he's a big guy, he goes, "Félicitations, mon ami," and gives me a big hug. I go, oh, okay. I think he's congratulating us for a good try. So I go up to the front of the room, and there's Mr. Ziegler, and there's Phil Esposito. And I look down, and there on a piece of paper is, the NHL is pleased and proud to announce today that conditional franchises have been granted to the cities of Ottawa and Tampa. I turned to the boys and said, oh my God, we just won this thing. And it was a great moment, I have to tell you. So that's what happened. Ottawa and Tampa won. And here's Mayor Durrell, and this is Gary Burns, who was an important part of our team, celebrating afterwards. There might have been a few beers involved. And this was the local newspaper, you know, showing the real, I think, happiness and the bringing together. Remember I said sports can sometimes bring communities together, the real bringing together of the community. And if you think about it, those hundreds of corporate sponsors, those thousands of PRNs, those hundreds of people who went to Palm Beach, you know, if I were bringing back the Belleville Bulls, that's what I would want. I'd want a whole community around me to surround a successful rebirth of, say, the Belleville Bulls. So it was a wonderful, wonderful moment. You all probably know Steve Nash. He is almost certainly the greatest Canadian basketball player ever. He was a two-time NBA most valuable player. And he said something very, very important, that a superstar, doesn't matter whether you're a superstar at Loyalist College as a prof, or you're a superstar in sports, or a superstar business person. A superstar is somebody who the day after the greatest accomplishment of her or his life goes back to work the next day or goes back to practice. That's a very important lesson. So while my team, and others were in Florida having a good time, which I wanted them to do, blowing off some steam, drinking some beer, partying a little bit for maybe 30 hours or so straight, I came back to Ottawa. Again, with Greg, we drove to Miami and then flew to Montreal and then drove to Ottawa. The airports were open at that time. And we started a season ticket campaign. We got organized for that. And over the next 10 days, we collected $22 million in cash from season ticket holders. And this is the certificate. Remember, I mentioned the PRNs, the priority registration. That's the certificate that people got signed by Cyril Leeder and Gary Burns. And so we harvested all the hard work we did. People came in with their cash, with their credit cards, with checks, you name it. And that's a very important part of defining your franchise and securing what Mr. Word said, a full building. Really important. Okay. Now, you remember that comment, you will never, ever, ever get an NHL franchise in Ottawa. Well, about 3 weeks after that, I get a call from that member of the Board of Governors. And he says, Bruce, how are you doing? I said, great, great. Things are going well. Our season ticket drive is going well. And he said, do you remember that statement I made to you the night before you got the franchise? I said, yeah, I do. Well, I wanted to tell you what we did. Me and two of the other guys on the Board of Governors decided to go up to every single bidder, Seattle, Milwaukee, Portland, Houston, Hamilton, Tampa, and say, you will never, ever, ever get a franchise in, fill in the name of the city. We wanted to see how people would react. And the only two people who kept on lobbying and kept on pushing for a franchise was you and Phil Esposito in Tampa. And that's who we gave the franchises to. So, a lot of people on the call are young people. And I think most young people, I was young once, think that love is the most important thing in life. But I actually think it's trust. If you don't trust your girlfriend or your boyfriend, your husband or your wife, your business partner, your suppliers, your clients, your life is going to be horrible, really horrible. A real quick way to get poor is to get divorced, right? So trust is a really, really big thing, and I will do almost anything legal to get people who I don't like and don't trust out of my life. And the NHL gave Phil a franchise for Tampa and gave Bruce a franchise for Ottawa because they frankly liked and trusted us, nothing else. Here's a picture of Phil, much younger, of course. He was fronting the Tampa Bay Lightning bid. So another week or so goes by, and Phil calls me up and says, hey, Bruce, it was really cool. I got this awesome call from the governor of the state of Florida. And he said, Mr. Esposito, we're thrilled to have the NHL in Florida. This was before the Florida Panthers came in, so it was the only team there. We just wanted to say, sir, if there's anything we can do to help you get a new arena built and get the team on the ice, you let us know. My door is always open. I said, that's great, Phil. He said, how was your reaction in Ontario? I said, well, it was a little different. We got a lawsuit. And what had happened, and I'm not a political guy. I don't belong to any political party, but politics plays a role in business. And what had happened was Bob Ray, who represented the New Democratic Party, had recently been elected premier of the province of Ontario. And we had a number of agreements with the government of Ontario, with David Peterson, who was the predecessor. He was a Liberal premier of the province of Ontario. But Mr. Peterson had called an election 2.5 years early and had been replaced by the NDP. And the NDP was very strong in Hamilton, not so much in Ottawa. And the NDP wanted the expansion franchise to go to Hamilton. It's a political thing. They had, I think, 8 or 9 MPPs there and only one in Ottawa Carleton. So they wanted to go there. So they decided to oppose the building of our new arena. Right? That is a major point in my life, obviously a negative occurrence, because if you know anything about real estate, all of the power of decision making really rests in the province, not in your city, not in Belleville's hands or Ottawa's hands or Toronto's hands. It belongs to the province. So Mr. Ray was the premier, and he said, yeah, we could litigate with the senators, prevent them from building their new building, which means we wouldn't qualify for unconditional membership. And maybe we can get the NHL to transfer that franchise to Hamilton, where we have an arena called the Cops Coliseum back in the day. So you can imagine, to this day, I'm not exactly a Bob Ray fan. Sorry, Bob. Anyway, we did a 13.5-week, $3.5 million of legal fees hearing against our own government. 13.5 weeks. And I was on the stand going through cross-examination for 3 days. You know, if you've ever seen those shows on TV where you go through cross-examination, those cross-examinations are pretty scary. Those lawyers are really smart. But anyway, somehow or other, we managed to defeat our own government after spending $3.5 million of legal fees. And this was the very first, this was October 1992, when we finally got the team on the ice. It was a wonderful, wonderful moment for me and for Randy and for Cyril. This is the first year team. And again, here I am in the middle, and we did not have a very good team that year. They tried awfully hard, but we got 24 points, guys. 24, think about that. I think we won 10 games and tied a few. And I went into the dressing room at the beginning of the year to talk to the fellas. And I said, guys, we've got to get 22 points or more this year. Hopefully a lot more, but not less than 22. And Brad Marsh, who was playing for the team at that time, said, why, Mr. Farson, 22? I said, because the worst ever team in the NHL, the 1972-73 Washington Capitals, got 21. And I know some of the men from that team. And everywhere they go, when they said, yeah, I played for the Caps back in the 70s, they said, were you on the worst ever team? They're going to have that until they pass away. And they're just praying that somebody's going to come along and take that record away from them. So let's make sure it's not us. So in terms of goal setting, I believe in democratizing goal setting. In other words, letting people know what the goals are. And we got 24 points. Hallelujah. And avoided the ignominy of being the worst ever team. And we got our building built. This is the Canadian Tire Center. And I want to just talk for another moment about Frank Finnegan. We got the conditional franchise in December of 1990 and became an unconditional member of the National Hockey League in December of 1991. And if you look at the date on this letter that I've digitized for you, it's December 20th, 1991. And Frank got quite, he's quite elderly. He got ill during that year, and he refused to pass away until he got the news. And his son, Frank Jr., as soon as we became unconditional members on December 20th, or maybe it was the 19th, 1991, I asked Randy, I said, you better call Frank Jr. and tell him that we are now unconditional members. His dad needs to hear that. So he did. And Frank was in the process of dying. And he asked his son, he dictated to his son this message: congratulations, Bruce, to you and all your dedicated staff. Your hard work has certainly paid off. I am proudly looking forward to the first Ottawa Senators NHL game in October 1992. Sincerely, best wishes to all. And you notice that the handwriting here is different from the signature. Frank Sr. was too ill to write the message, but he was okay to sign it. So Frank Jr. wrote it and Frank Sr. signed it. After Frank Sr. signed it, he turned to the wall and died. His last mission on Earth was accomplished. I love this quote: "We would accomplish many more things if we did not think of them as impossible." And I'm just going to stop sharing my screen just for a moment, just to reinforce that quote. I'm watching a series on Netflix. It's called MAID, M-A-I-D. It's about a young woman who has a baby, and she is horribly abused by her partner. And so she escapes in the middle of the night. And she ends up living in a ferry terminal, the only place that she can shelter with her baby. There really is no family to go to. There's really no help for her. She goes to get some government assistance, and they give her a stack of forms this thick and said, "Go and fill these out." I do a lot of work with single moms, the Emily Murphy Nonprofit Housing Corporation, and others. And the reason I bring this up is that a lot of folks are really struggling today. To me, it's unforgivable that in Canada, the United States, and elsewhere, not just in North America, we cannot provide enough housing for our people. My dad, O.J. Firestone, was a professor too. And he started Central Mortgage and Housing Corporation with C.D. Howe after the post-World War II. It's now called Canada Mortgage and Housing. It was called Central Mortgage and Housing Corporation. If C.D. Howe and my dad were alive today, they would kick everybody's butts in Canada. They would kick Mr. Trudeau's butt. They wouldn't hesitate. It is a travesty that a modest home in Toronto is over $2 million. You know, I have 5 kids. And the reason I brought up MAID is it's a very good series. It's a limited series made by Warner Brothers, but it does teach something else. She finally finds work. This young woman, her name is Alex, finally finds work as a maid, making $7.25 an hour. With all of her deductions, you know, she's probably making about $5 an hour. So maybe $200 a week, you know, and I don't even think it's that much. It's about $175 a week. And, you know, when I'm watching that, I realize how important it would be, and it might be, to teach the people like Alex and many others the entrepreneurial mindset. And by that, I mean, I do some pro bono coaching, and I coach a young woman who's in an almost identical situation. Her name is Brooke. And she has a baby, and she's on her own. She was living with her baby, couch surfing. All right, just imagine that. Like she had to crash in people's homes if they would give her charity and allow her to put her baby on the sofa, and she would sleep on the floor. She came to me for some coaching, and I said to her, "Brooke, do you have any skills?" "Not really." "Did you finish high school?" "No." "Do you have a partner, you know, a fella?" And she said, "Well, he told me that if I ever went to him for any money, he would run away and disappear and disown his own child." I said, "Well, he's a real prince." So I said, "Well, is there anything you like to do?" She said, "Well, I probably shouldn't say it, but there's one thing I like to do. Actually, I do." I said, "What's that?" "I like to clean." She said, "Oh, that's interesting. You like to clean?" She said, "I really do." So I said, "Well, let's set up a cleaning business then." "Oh, do you think I could do that?" Brooke comes from a family of working class people that have been working class probably for hundreds of years, maybe even thousands, but certainly hundreds. And the idea of starting a business was as foreign to Brooke as me beating Usain Bolt in a 100-meter dash. Not likely to happen unless I ride my motorcycle. So I said, "Well, Brooke, you could start a business." "Oh, really? Could I? How would I do that?" She had no clue. So, excuse me for a second. Sorry, apologize. So I said, "Brooke, let's print up some postcards, you know, and circulate it in your neighborhood." She said, "Well, I don't really have a neighborhood." "Well," I said, "what neighborhood would you like to live in?" "All right, So let's circulate them. So we did. And I helped her a little bit financially. I staked her to like a vacuum cleaner that, the ones you look like Ghostbusters, you put them on your back, because you can't be dragging if you're a professional cleaner, you need one that goes on your back. So she needed cleaning supplies and she needed a vacuum cleaner. She didn't have a car. I said, well, I got a buddy who sells used cars. He'll sell it to you on credit. But I don't have any credit. I said, yeah, I know that, but he'll do it because I'll ask him. And I said, I have a ton of contacts in real estate and they run Airbnbs. What's Airbnb? She says, well, I explained it to her. So I said, okay. And the good thing about Airbnb is every few days they need to be cleaned, right? And nuked. She said, okay, that'd be good. So she started her cleaning business. And within a couple of years, she was making $65,000 a year. So I'm thinking about this young woman in the Warner Brothers series, Alex, and she has no concept of that it would be possible, right? And and there's a racial aspect to this as well. And I hope you don't mind me bringing it up, but a lot of white children understand it's okay to ask, and a lot of Black children do not. They're told to shut up, be quiet. So the entrepreneurial mindset can be a ticket to freedom for lots and lots and lots of people. And, Brooke could have gone to work as a cleaner for somebody else. Back then, it would have been probably $10 or $11 an hour. She makes $65,000 a year. She now has her own cleaning company and she has some employees working with her. And she will, within a few years, she will break 100,000 a year, right? That is a material change. So there you go. That was a little bit of a distraction. I hope you don't mind, Kim. Is that okay? Okay. All right. So I'll go back to my real purpose here. But anyway, so you have, as an entrepreneur, you have to say, why not? Instead of asking why, you ask, why not? Use that, okay? Because, when people said, you're going to bring back a hockey team that hasn't played since 1927 or 1933 or whatever it was for the Sens, I said, yeah, why not? Now, there was a few other things that happened along the way, right? I wish this story had a happy ending, and maybe it does. But there are some, there's some zigzags on the way. Mr. Ray and his government were dead set against us building this building. So they reneged on a promise to build this interchange. If you can see the circle here, there's still to this day, the only privately funded interchange on a 400 series highway in Ontario was built by us, because the province had agreed to build the interchange for us, but Mr. Ray said, oh, money's tight, so sorry, can't do it. So we had to build our building. We had to build our own multi-million, tens of millions of dollars interchange. And the Canadian dollar went from 90 cents when we bought the NHL team to about 62 or 63 cents. And our salaries went from $6.5 million to $84 million. Don't try that in your next business. That's not good. And in the mid-2000s, the Sens went bankrupt. All right, this was part of the public record. Nothing, I'm not ashamed of it, but that's what happened. And there I was, 54 years of age, with 5 kids, a mother-in-law, a wife to support, and my net worth went from whatever, quite a good number, to a negative number. So there I was, 54 years of age, worth a negative about 1.7 million. That means I owed money. So I tell people that I coach, you have 3 days. The first day you can feel sorry for yourself, and the second day you get mad at the world, and the third day, get up, get a little bit of exercise, and just get on with your life. It probably didn't take me 3 days, probably took me a couple anyway. And so I ended up with 8 full-time jobs. I had no money. I had lost my house. I think I was allowed to keep my suit, and that's about it. And so I took a job teaching in Stockholm at Hyper Island Institute. I worked at the Israeli School of Architecture and Urbanism, the Sprott School of Business. I started my coaching and consulting practice. I went back to school. There I was, 54 years of age, surrounded by people in their 20s. I was embarrassed because everybody knew me. What the hell are you doing here? I went back to school and got my realtor license. I'm a real estate broker now. I started going back to work as a real estate developer because I kind of know something. I started doing keynote speaking because maybe I can't do anything else, but I can talk. You may have noticed. And I wrote a bunch of books, right? And there's a picture of me in Stockholm when I was teaching there. So here's some of the books I wrote. This was a trilogy called Quantum Entity. It was made into a movie. There are the other two books. It's a trilogy, so there were 3 of them. And I wrote another story. This is a story about a young woman in the future who's a rabble rouser. And there's a lot of real estate in my books. Sorry about that, but there is. Anyway, she's a rabble rouser and she leads a revolution. And then I wrote some handbooks, why and why not to invest in real estate, gadgets and gizmos, retire rich, retire early, for those of you interested in real estate investing made easy. I mean, I can't count how many I wrote. I only have 2 addictions, you guys. One is to writing, the other's to my wife. And I did ask Kim and others to give you free ebooks if you want them. So I think, Kim, I sent you the links this morning.
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Thank you, Bruce.
Oh, you're welcome. Happy to do it. So if you're interested, you get them and you can read them if you want. So business model illustrations, real estate investment and personal business for life, mini case studies. It's only 67 pages. You can be sure that I've written books that are hundreds of pages. This is not one of them. You could be thankful. And you know what books are, right? Books are TV for smart people, right? And so business model illustrations has 10 mini case, it's only 67 pages. So it's got 10 case studies in it. Real estate and business ones. It'll really help you guys if you have time to read it. And Don't Back Down, which is the story of the Ottawa Senators. But there are 4 themes in it. Obviously, talking about the National Hockey League and the Ottawa Senators. Again, there's a lot of real estate in it. And then there's my personal story in there. And my wife told me, oh, nobody will be interested in your personal story, Bruce. But it turned out tens of thousands of people actually liked it. And it's been optioned for a movie, but I don't know who will get to play me. You know, maybe a young Dustin Hoffman or something. All right, so I'm going to stop there for a moment. And Kim, I just wanted to open it up if there are any questions. And look, guys, I'm actually a nice person, at least I say so. And if there are any questions, just unmute yourself and ask away. And don't be shy. Come on, one of you guys have to have the guts to start a question. Michael.
Hey, Bruce, it's Brad Berger.
Oh, Brad, okay. Well, Michael, you're next, okay?
Pardon me?
Sorry, hang on. Do you guys know how to do this? You know, put up like a clap or a raise hand, you know? So if you, Michael, just raise your hand. You know how to do that on Zoom? Just go look for reactions and raise your hand. Okay, Mike, we got Michael. Okay, Brad, you first.
I just wanted to ask, are you living in Belleville now, Bruce?
So we bought it. We're renovating some buildings downtown.
Right.
There's the old China Gate building, which you can see is being renovated. And across the street, our group bought the Maze Mall, also going through renovation. And my wife and I just bought a house in Belleville as well.
Nice.
On William Street in Old East Hill. I get that right? Yeah. And but it needs a little bit of work. So we're right now we're still in Ottawa, but we're not too old for a new adventure. My wife's a bit younger than me, so she wants a new adventure, and I like to sail. So the Bay of Quinte is looking awfully good.
I was talking to Nick Foley, and he mentioned that project you've got going on downtown. Is that something you can discuss or share?
Absolutely. I do have a couple of slides, Brad, on it, and I'm going to show them, okay, what we're doing with one of the buildings. Sure. Can I do that?
Absolutely.
Okay, but I'm going to answer Michael's questions first before I go back to my slides, okay?
Yep.
All right, Michael.
Awesome. So when I was doing a little bit of research into your background, I realized how important giving back to the community was to you. So I was kind of wondering what your opinion on corporate social responsibility and community involvement is, and like more specifically the importance of it and where you see it going in the future.
So, you know, maybe this comes across wrong, but there's a very different way of doing business. And I can't honestly tell you which one is right. There's an American style business, which is that you have the head of the business, the CEO, and his or her word is God. It's like the 10 Commandments, right? And they can be miserable human beings. They can kick butt, you know, and they just, you know, they fire people left, right, and center, and they terrorize their employees, even their customers, their suppliers. Are you aware that Apple and Amazon deal with their suppliers down to the nearest thousandth of a cent? So
No,
last time you and your buddies were saying, okay, we've got a $100 bar bill, how are we going to split it up? I doubt that you're dividing it up to the nearest thousandth of a cent. So that's one way of doing business. And you can't argue that Amazon and Apple and some of these other corporations are not successful. They're extremely successful. You know, Steve Jobs was obviously very, very brilliant at Apple, tremendous mind and presence, but he was a tyrant. He was. I mean, the way he treated his family, his daughter, his employees, he had temper tantrums. It was not an easy environment to work in. But, you know, they're sitting on, I think Apple's worth over $2 trillion. It's incredible. So that's one thought about business. And then there's another thought, which is where I would go. And certainly, you know, my company was nowhere near the scale of the ones I just mentioned. But my company, I'll give you an example. We put so much effort, Michael, into staff training. And, you know, back in the day when I was running the sentence, we had a lot of young staff, many of them young women. And I realized that many of them would have children. And what we did was, this is long before anybody else was doing it, I think. We gave our female employees 6 months at 90% pay after they had their child. And then we gave them another 6 months at 60%. And we would even give them a second year, but that was unpaid. So we would hold their jobs open for 2 years. And some of my friends who were CEOs of other companies said, that's crazy. Why would you do that? And I said, well, we spent so much time, you know, training our staff. And I looked at the churn rate, our employee churn rate, Michael, and it was just under 3%, which implies that the average person would stay with our company over 30 years. That's a long time. And we just valued, you know, employee stability and experience. Other Canadian companies don't. I'll give you another example. Canadian Tire will fire, Canadian Tire franchisees will fire their entire staff because of wage creep. They say, oh my gosh, you know, we hired Michael, this is back in the day, we hired Michael, he was making $3.15 an hour. Now it's like, holy smokes, he's making over $4. You know, we got to get rid of him. And then you go to a Canadian Tire store, this happened to me, and you say, do you have any like rollerblades here? You know, I got my two little boys, we want to buy them rollerblades. Oh, no, we don't have any such things. And this guy who was a Canadian Tire employee, as soon as he moves away, right behind him, like 10 feet by, you know, 80 feet of rollerblades right behind him. Oh, no, we don't have any such thing. So, you know, I don't really know the answer. I just know what my answer is. All right, anything else? Come on, guys. Okay, all right, Aaron.
Well, first, just thanks so much for doing this. So much insight, and to hear the story of how you kind of bootstrapped the Ottawa Senators, bootstrapped that NHL expansion team. That's absolutely incredible. One thing I'm curious about for you, your career, is your ability to get people to buy into your vision or what you are trying to get them to do. Obviously, with the Senators that happened, and with other things. Can you maybe just talk a little bit, or tell me a little bit about how that came about, or how do you do that? How do you approach that?
Yeah. So when I do some coaching now, you know, I try and find something like I did with Brooke that, you know, you like to do, where you have some skills, and you know, I think if you have a passion for what you do, you're more likely to be successful, because there will be roadblocks. I mean, roadblocks galore. It doesn't matter who you are or what type of business. There will be moments when everybody will tell you, you know, I'm sure Brooke's family would say, wait, what? You can't start a business. You know, you don't even have high school. Well, yeah. So, you know, why not, right? So I think if you don't have an absolute belief in yourself, no one else will believe in you. And one thing I had with my staff, Aaron, was an absolute belief. We would have crossed, hot coals to get that team. And when we thought we had failed in the basement of the Breakers Hotel, golly, I remember what my dad said, never take no for an answer. And we weren't going to take no for an answer. So you have to have an absolute belief. And how do you get that? The way you get a belief in yourself, and this may be a little self-serving, but is maybe to find a coach or a mentor, somebody you like and trust, who can tell you when you're on the right track, but also maybe when you're on the wrong track, so you don't waste 4 or 5 years of your life. But I find if you have people around you that are supportive, if you get rid of people in your life who are negative, just get, whether it's a family member or anyone else, and you develop a belief in yourself. Another way to get a belief in yourself is to have some success, early success. In Brooke's case, I introduced her to one of my clients who has, I don't know, over 100 Airbnbs. And all of a sudden, she was cleaning like, as many hours as she could, and she was allowed to bring her baby to the houses because it's Airbnb. There's nobody there. Like if the baby cries, she could feed her baby, and nobody's going to. So having a little bit of early success really helps. Okay, are there any? Was there anybody else? Oh, Michael again?
Yeah, I just had another quick
Follow
one.
up? Okay, good.
Yeah, I know you do a lot of work with entrepreneurs, and I was just wondering what your biggest advice for entrepreneurs would be.
Well, I have been working on business models since the early 1990s, long before it became a thing. I think I'm probably the world's leading expert in business models, certainly in real estate business models, but maybe all business models, including tech. And there's a difference, Michael, between a business model and a business plan. A business plan is 30 or 40 pages that no one will read, in my opinion. The only people today in 2021 who want a business plan, written business plan, are Canadian banks. And you may know this, that Canadian banks only lend money to people who don't need it. And what that means is that Canadian banks, they'll be super nice to you. They'll say, Michael, come on in. Here's our loans officer, Bill. And you'll sit down with Bill, and Bill will say, oh, well, you got to write a business plan. Now you go off and spend the next 3 or 4 weeks writing a 40-page business plan. Then you send it to him. Then he asks you for your credit score. And then he asks you for your personal assets, what kind of collateral you have. Do you have any real estate? How much cash do you have? And he'll put you through 4 months of due diligence and then tell you no. So I'm not a fan of business plans, but a business model is different. It's very simple. It's 1 page. In the middle is you, your business. On this side are your suppliers. On this side are your customers. And up here is some kind of marketing dimension. And the marketing dimension is important because if you came to me and said, Bruce, I got this great idea for a startup, and all I need is $5 million to buy a Super Bowl commercial, and I might get my first client. Well, that's probably not going to work. Okay? So you need to understand how you're going to acquire clients cost effectively. And don't tell me I'm going to post something to Twitter and everybody's going to then find me. That is, excuse my language, but a little bit of BS. Okay? So, you have a marketing dimension that talks about how you're going to drive sales, and you've got a real good understanding of your customers, real good understanding of your your suppliers, and you understand how you're adding value in the middle. That's your business. And then as you get a little bit more sophisticated, you're going to look not at your suppliers, but at your supply chain. And what I mean by that is Walmart, for example, understands its supply chain all the way back to, not to the coal mine, but pretty far back. And so it means if they need more basketballs in Tallahassee and more hockey skates in Belleville, that their suppliers who are plugged into their supply chain know that. So they drop ship. So more basketballs appear in a Walmart in Tallahassee and more skates appear in a crappy tire in Belleville, okay? Without Walmart doing anything, right? So they probably are the best supply chain managers in the world. And on the client side, you're going to figure out who are your clients and who are your clients of your clients. You go, what the heck? What does it mean, clients of your clients? I'll give you an example. I coached a young couple who, quite some time ago now, who started a spa. And I asked them after a couple of years, who are the clients of your clients? They said, what do you mean? I said, well, who are your clients? 97% of their clients were female, 3% were male. So most of them were ladies. And I said, who are the clients of your clients? And they said, I don't know. I said, well, mostly men, right? And what do men want from the spa? They said, well, I don't know. And I said, well, they want gift certificates so they can give to their ladies, you know, at Christmas time or birthdays or anniversaries, etc. Oh, you think so? I said, yeah, I think so. And so they started their you know, gift coupon or whatever program about 6 weeks before Christmas back, this would have been the 90s. And they sold 250,000 gift certificates in like 6 weeks. And about 20% of them are never claimed. So about $50,000 is just free money, right? So a business model has multiple dimensions on either side, and it can have multiple dimensions up here too. But I think that's enough. Josh, you wanted to ask a question. You have to unmute yourself, Josh. Maybe turn on your camera too, brother.
I think I got my camera on, but it's I don't think anything's coming up.
Well, you look just like Brad Pitt.
Perfect. That was the look I was going for this morning.
There you go.
But no, I want to say thank you for your presentation. I appreciated the passion in the whole founding of this almost breathing this vision of yours into reality, and I can relate on a much smaller scale. I'm from Tyndall territory, which is just beside Belleville.
Yep.
So welcome to the area.
Thank you.
It's been one of my dreams to have a team here, but more importantly, have an arena. We're one of the few Mohawk communities that don't have our own arena. I played lacrosse. I traveled to Akwesasne and Ganawage and Six Nations and Onondaga and viewed their beautiful arenas. So we've been trying to get this arena here for our community. I'm a big believer that sports are a great hub for our communities. Brings together younger people, older people, whoever. But I really, I don't know, a light bulb went off when you talked about getting the team, and then the arena kind of has to go with it. So I think that's kind of going to shift our focus, where we'd love to have a junior A hockey team here or a junior A lacrosse team here, but perhaps maybe going the route of getting the team and then making the case for the arena, the need for the arena, and how that stimulates the economy and the community.
Can I comment on that, Josh?
If you can.
So for everybody on the call today, I just put in my email address in the chat box. Josh, can you see the chat box? Hopefully it's blinking a little.
Yes, I can.
Okay, so when this call is over, the chat box goes away. So if you don't mind, you could copy, and everybody else, you're welcome to do it as well. Copy my email address out of the chat box. It's bruce@brucemfirestone.com. And Josh, if you want, you can drop me a note. But let me tell you a little bit about private arenas. I built a number of them. I think four, I think, at this stage, okay? And no, 5. I built one, or helped build one in Mongolia, in Ulaanbaatar. I was a consultant on that. So I've done 5. So let me give you an example, all right? There's an arena here in this area in Gatineau, Quebec, which is a sister city to Ottawa on the Quebec side. So they have an arena, and on the second level, they have a restaurant overlooking one of their ice pads. You with me so far?
Yep.
All right. So they asked me to come and do some coaching consulting for them after they build it. That's kind of like asking, for help after you're, well, I won't say what I was going to say. That wouldn't have been appropriate here. But so they've already built it, and they said, well, we're losing money. And I said, okay, I'll come and visit. And so I did. And I looked at the restaurant. It was quite a nice restaurant overlooking. And they said, well, isn't that cool? Our restaurant overlooks the ice. I said, yeah, it looks cool, but do you make any money? No, it's a loser. And I said, well, guys, the reason for that is you should have taken that restaurant and put it at grade, put it at the base of the building, and it should have been double loaded. So you would have a restaurant that sort of protrudes out the front of the building. It has a nice patio, and people who are inside the building can access it without coming outside. But people who, even when there are dark days in the arena's not in use, people can still come to the building and enjoy a meal, a sports bar, and watch a hockey game, watch a football game, whatever. The difference is this: the difference of a restaurant on a busy road that is double loaded is in the millions of dollars in terms of annual sales and also rent paid. So when you're building a private sector arena, in your area, one of the things you can do, in addition to trying to find a junior A or junior B team, you can also find, if you will, a ring of revenue producers. It could be a sports store, it could be a sports bar, it could be cannabis sales, I don't know, whatever it is these days. And that's a ring around the ring of the arena, but it's double loaded. It means it can serve the passing public. You don't need to buy a ticket. You just go there and have a drink or buy something that you need. So there's ways to build these buildings today that really will help you. So I put my email address in there. Feel free to reach out to me and I can certainly give you a few more clues.
I appreciate that, and I will for sure, Bruce. Thank you.
Yeah, just reach out. And the best way to get me, you guys, is by email. I've got 2,500 clients and they all call me every day. I'll never get anything built and done. All right, so I'm going to go back to my screen sharing. I think, Brad, this is what you asked me about, right? So this is the building here on the right is a building I bought in downtown Belleville. My wife and I bought it last year. It's called the China Gate Restaurant. And the former owners had put this really hideous metal cladding on it and a horrible brick veneer. And they had treated the building incredibly badly. In the back, I won't even show you the back of the building. In the back of the building, the owners of the restaurant wanted to have a new loading door. So they just went through a bearing wall without putting a lintel in. And, and the windows on the second floor, as the building started to do this, popped out. Instead of being, that would be your first clue, Sherlock, that there's something structurally wrong with the building, they just boarded up the windows and carried on. So unfortunately, they went broke. And my wife saw the building, I guess, October of last year. And I visited Belleville. I'm very fond of Belleville and Prince Edward County and Hastings County. And we bought this building. It's called a power sale. I mean, it was really shambles. On the left-hand side of my screen is what it used to look like in the 70s. You can tell by the cars. It had 3 stores here and some apartments up above. And we're going to reinstate the building, renovate it to its historic condition. So hopefully next year, we're going to have a big party on Front Street in the summer. The building will celebrate 150th anniversary next year. And when you see it, it'll be fantastic, I think. Here's a picture I put in of what Belleville used to look like in the 40s. And, one of my hobby horses is that we build really, really, really terrible cities today. Like car-centric cities, and they're certainly not walkable. And look at how busy Front Street was. And, you'd go down there, talk about bringing the community together. You go down there, you'd see everybody, Saturday shopping. And this is our building here. So you can see it here. This is what it used to look like. I mean, it was just really an awesome place to live and work. And today, that's what people want. Certainly young people want to live and work. The idea of getting up in the morning and driving for an hour and a half in your Tesla to go up into a 20-story office building with horrible air and bad fluorescent light, then coming down and another hour and a half home, that is a horrible way to live. So we're going to renovate this into a live, work, play, make, eat, live, socialized place, and the building across the street. And there are other people doing the same thing in Belleville. And so that's what it used to look like. This is me in front of the building as we are redeveloping it. You might recognize this Anseville. That's Jeremy Lauren, Mark McCormick. Mark, help me out, Mark. Ken?
Kirkpatrick. It's
Mark
Kirkpatrick.
Kirkpatrick. I was close. Mark, and this is me, and it turns out that Loyalist is going to open up an incubator in this space behind you here. It's going to be called Accelerate Loyalist College, and it's not just for students from Loyalist, but anybody who's interested in getting some mentoring and teaching. I'm certainly going to be involved. You know, can come downtown Belleville and get a desk and get some mentoring, get some coaching, etc. So I'm really excited about that. We're going to have an entrepreneur in residence program, which means, and you know, if you have some coaching and mentoring, generally speaking, you'll grow faster, and certainly your survivability will be much higher. That's my opinion, anyway. So, thank you.
Bruce, thank you. What a great presentation. Like you covered a lot of information, but great information, like very beneficial to these students in this group. I think there's just so much they can take away.
Well, the one thing that I really didn't get a chance to do here, Kim, today is to take you through some of the smaller businesses that I've coached. And I'll just give you a quick example. One is called Hat Trick Ball Hockey League, and it was started by Dan and John a few years ago, I think 2011, so almost a decade ago. And it's just they rent gym space, and they bring together people who want to play ball hockey, and just about anybody can play ball hockey. And they've been very successful. They have sponsorship, and they have signage, and they do all the things that big league teams do, Josh. You know, and you know, it's a very profitable business. So it doesn't have to, you don't, like I said when I started, it doesn't have to be a $500 million business or multi-billion-dollar businesses. There are a lot of these sports and entertainment businesses that you can start for almost no money. Another one of my clients, she started a glamping business. If you guys know what glamping is, it's glamorous camping, right? And she buys yurts from a company called Yurta. YURTA.ca. And Yurta.ca was started by a former student of mine, Anissa Sato. These are fabulous, fabulous yurts. They're cylindrical tent structures. They're good down to -40, so they're good for winter and summer. They're insulated and they have a heat source. And she just, she has a piece of land and she has a bunch of yurts, and her business is taking off. Very, very, very low cost startup. So there's all kinds of ideas out there to start sports and entertainment businesses that are not expensive, that are not a $500 million startups. And I would strongly encourage you guys to think it through. And if you want to run them by me, you got my email address. All right, so is there anything else, Kim, that we should do before I leave?
I don't think so. Maybe ask for one last round of if there's any possible questions here. I mean, this is a resource that you're not always going to have access to someone that has such an extensive knowledge of well, many levels, but the whole journey through the NHL path, that was that was just crazy. So can you actually elaborate, I guess, when you paid the money to the government, this is a personal question, to do the off ramps for the highway, were you able to actually recover a lot of the money on the sale of that land, like once you rezoned everything?
That is a very, very good question. So we did not give the money to the government. We built it ourselves. I'll give you an example of government in action. You can tell that I'm not really sure that if we rely on government to provide affordable housing, that we're going to be successful. But let me give you another example. We played, before we built the Palladium, now Canadian Tire Center, we played 3.5 years in the Civic Center downtown Ottawa. Civic Center is a very small building, 10,000 seats. And I went to the city of Ottawa and said, you know, I think I can renovate your building. And they said, what for? I said, I could put in about 42 suites. You guys know what a suite is? Like, it's a private suite, you know, it's where you can go with your buddies and have a little bit of privacy and watch the game. And they said, that'd be cool. I said, yeah, I'm a civil engineer. I'm pretty sure I can do it. And they said, well, that's great. Would you like us to build it for you? Would you do that? They said, sure, we want to do everything we can. I'm talking about the city, not the province. So I said, okay. So they came back to me and said, we can build 16 suites for $12 million. ooh, that's kind of expensive, $750,000 a suite. Yeah, well, we've looked at it. I said, well, I think I should do it myself, with my contractor. It was PCL, one of the biggest construction companies in the world. So we built 42 suites, including FF&E, furniture, fit up, and equipment, Kim, for $3.5 million. That worked out to about $65,000 a suite, including, your furniture, your televisions, and your bar fridge, and your carpet, and everything else. And we need government. I'm not anti-government. I just don't think governments should actually do anything, because they're horrible at doing things. We need regulation and we need laws for sure, but they're really terrible at doing stuff. They were going to spend $750,000 a suite, and we did it for about 65 grand. That's about a factor of 10 or 12, I think. So that's my take on it. If you want to do something, don't give the money. Like, we built that Palladium interchange for probably about $35 million. The government would have spent $100 million. All right. You may know this story. You guys will enjoy this. While we were building the Palladium, the Canadian Tire Center, the province of Ontario decided to help build the Sky Dome, where it's called the Rogers Center today, where the Blue Jays play. And the original budget they announced, the province announced, was $150 million. I said, wow, that's incredible. They're going to build this 45,000 seat stadium with a retractable roof for $150 million. That's incredible, because our budget for the Canadian Tire Center was $240 million back then. And we built it for $236 million. So we were about $4 million under budget, and we delivered it 4 months early. Well, the Sky Dome ended up costing $650 million. They were $500 million over budget, and everybody on this call, including the young people, are going to be paying for that until they have grandchildren. So again, governments are really horrible at doing things, and the private sector is probably better. All right, are there any other questions? So one last thing I'll say, and then I got to go. I have a recording of this. I will upload it to YouTube unlisted, and I'll make sure that our professors here have a copy of it, and you can share it with the students, but I don't want it to be made public. Is that okay with everybody? All right, it's for you guys. And of course, other students, Kim, can see it, and I'm happy for you to share it with your students, but I just don't want it, I said some things about the mainstream media that I really don't want.
Understood.
Public.
No. Yeah, we understand that. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Dean. All right, I'll see you guys later.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce.